I actually started work on the 31st of August 1953, and I was 15 years old that day. The apprenticeship was 6 years in those days. The first thing you did when you went in there as an apprentice, you were put into in our case, into the sawmill, where you assisted the machinists, really just lifting timber around and so forth. And that was for the first 3 months. And then you were moved from there into the workshop itself, onto the bench, and you were put with a mechanic. As I say, you started off making your own toolbox. That was your first task. From then on, you gradually progressed. You would, those days, they put you at college 1 day a week and 1 evening. So you had a certain amount of training up there, and the rest was practical in the workshop itself. And, of course, as apprentice, you always got called on to do all the lumber work. When the timber lorries arrived and that, we were always sent down to unload the lorries, and very often fiberglass in them days. There was a lot of fiberglass and asbestos, and we used to unload the lorries of asbestos and fiberglass, not realising those days the danger of the materials. Never any face masks or anything like that, so there was dust floating around everywhere. And of course, as apprentices, young lads, we used to throw it at each other. My apprenticeship finished when I was 21, but it was almost the end of national service. So I was on the borderline whether I was called up or not. And I didn't get called up until the following year, in 1960, in July, which by that time I thought I was lucky enough not to get called up, but I was on the last intake. So I went into the Royal Hampshires in 1960. Financially it was a disaster, really, but you finish your apprenticeship, so you go on to a mechanic's wage. At that particular time was around £11, I think it was, per week. And you go into the forces, and that was about 27 and sixpence, I think it was then, which was, well, in today's money is about £1.30 something. So you did get a little bit more as you did your time in the army, but I mean, I think the top money was about £4.50. So during that period, there was no chance of saving. I met my wife, Pat, shortly after I came back from the forces. I think it was two years after I met my wife. We got married, but the bank account wasn't too full at that time, so we rented a house then. So it was 5 years after my apprenticeship before I could afford to buy anything. Well, that's the toolbox I made when I was an apprentice. First job I did as an apprentice. There's some of my tools still in the toolbox. always been with me, moved from place to place. Going back to my younger days and that, East Cowes was a place where you practically knew everyone because it was only a small town. It was difficult to get out of the town. I mean, when I was a boy, if we went on a bus ride, that was a day's out. That was a real pleasure. That was a day's outing to us. So people did everything in the local area. These days, it's got so big. So many people from the mainland that's moved in that you don't know anyone now. After saying that, my wife came from the mainland as well, so